Rain has a strange way of exposing the cracks people spend years hiding. By the time Rowan Mercer pulled his aging pickup truck onto the narrow gravel driveway, the sky had turned almost black, even though it was barely 4 in the afternoon. Sheets of rain hammered the windshield while thunder rolled across the valley like distant drums. His 8-year-old daughter, Nora, slept against the passenger window, clutching the worn stuffed fox she'd carried since her mother passed away 3 years earlier. Rowan rubbed his tired eyes, wondering how life had become one endless battle between grief, bills, and pretending everything was going to be okay. He had come only to fix a leaking roof. He never imagined one invitation would change every broken piece of his future. Before we begin this emotional journey, please take a moment to like this video, leave a comment, share it with someone who believes in kindness and second chances, and subscribe to A Journey of Hearts. Your support helps these heartfelt stories reach people who may need hope today. The farmhouse belonged to Maren Elwood, a quiet woman in her early 30s who had recently moved into the old property after inheriting it from her grandparents. The house stood alone among tall maple trees, surrounded by rolling fields soaked by autumn rain. Rowan had accepted the repair job because the extra money meant he could finally replace Nora's worn-out winter boots before the first snowfall. Life hadn't been generous to Rowan. His wife had died suddenly after a brief illness, leaving him with mountains of hospital debt and a little girl who asked every night whether heaven had visiting hours. He worked every job he could find: roof repairs, fence building, painting barns, fixing porches. Sleep became a luxury. Dreams became something other people could afford. Maren greeted him with a grateful smile that somehow carried sadness of its own. She wasn't the cheerful kind of person who filled silence with endless conversation. Instead, she spoke carefully, almost as though every word had to earn its place. The roof repair stretched longer than expected because hidden water damage had weakened several support beams. Rowan worked through the afternoon despite the worsening weather, determined to finish before another storm rolled through. But nature had different plans. The rain intensified until visibility nearly disappeared. Wind bent tree branches almost to the ground. Lightning struck somewhere beyond the fields, followed instantly by deafening thunder. Driving home with Nora in those conditions would be dangerous. Maren quietly prepared hot soup while Rowan gathered his tools inside the garage. Nora woke and smiled shyly when she smelled fresh bread warming in the kitchen. For the first time in weeks, Rowan watched his daughter laugh at something simple: a cat chasing raindrops across the porch. Sometimes healing begins so quietly that nobody notices. After dinner, the electricity flickered twice before going out completely. Only candles remained. The farmhouse suddenly felt suspended outside time. Maren apologized for the inconvenience, insisting they could wait until the storm passed. She found extra blankets and lit a fire in the stone fireplace. Nora curled beside it, wrapped in warmth and sleepy comfort. Hours slipped by. The rain showed no sign of stopping. Finally, Maren looked toward Rowan with gentle concern and suggested they stay the night. She explained that the guest room upstairs was already prepared and that the roads flooding nearby made traveling far too risky. Then she mentioned he could sleep on the sofa while Nora used the guest bed. Rowan looked toward the staircase. Then back toward the little girl already asleep by the fire. Without hesitation, he refused the sofa. Not because he felt entitled. Not because he wished to make anyone uncomfortable. He simply smiled with quiet gratitude and said that wherever Nora slept, he would sleep beside her on the floor if necessary. She had spent too many nights waking from nightmares searching for him after losing her mother. He had promised never to let her wake up alone again. Some promises become the foundation of an entire life. Maren didn't answer immediately. Instead, something changed inside her expression. She disappeared upstairs and returned minutes later carrying another mattress. Together they arranged both mattresses inside the guest room so father and daughter could sleep comfortably beside one another. It wasn't the mattress that moved Maren. It was the promise. She had spent years believing dependable people no longer existed. Watching Rowan quietly choose his daughter's comfort over his own challenged everything she thought she knew. Morning arrived wrapped in golden sunlight. The storm had washed the world clean. Birdsong filled the fields. For Nora, it felt like an adventure. For Rowan, it was simply another workday waiting to begin. Before leaving, Maren insisted on paying him more than they had agreed because the repair had required additional materials. Rowan politely accepted only the original amount. He explained that honesty mattered more than easy money because someday Nora would become the kind of adult shaped by the choices she watched him make now. Again, Maren stood speechless. Over the following weeks, she found small reasons to call Rowan back. A sticking window. A broken gate. Loose porch steps. Some repairs barely required 20 minutes. Others didn't require fixing at all. Yet Rowan never complained. He completed every task carefully, accepted fair payment, and hurried home before Nora finished school. Eventually, Maren admitted the truth. Sometimes she simply appreciated hearing another person moving around the quiet house. Loneliness echoes differently in large rooms. Rowan understood. He had lived with silence long enough to recognize its weight. One Saturday afternoon, Nora wandered through the farmhouse garden while Rowan repaired an old greenhouse. She discovered faded wind chimes buried beneath climbing ivy. Together, she and Maren cleaned them carefully before hanging them near the porch. Their gentle music drifted through the yard whenever the breeze passed. For the first time in years, laughter lingered longer than silence. As autumn slowly surrendered to winter, their friendship settled into something comfortable. No grand declarations. No dramatic romance. Only countless ordinary moments stitched together by kindness. Hot coffee shared after long workdays. Fresh bread left anonymously on Rowan's porch. Homemade soup delivered whenever Nora caught a cold. Tiny acts of care became habits. Then everything nearly fell apart. The construction company where Rowan received most of his seasonal work announced unexpected layoffs. Within days, his income disappeared. Christmas stood barely 3 weeks away. Bills piled higher. Heating costs climbed. The little savings he'd managed to build evaporated almost overnight. He sold extra tools. Skipped meals. Pretended everything remained normal. Children notice more than adults believe. Nora quietly stopped asking for toys she'd circled in holiday catalogs. Instead, she wrote one simple Christmas wish. "I hope Daddy smiles again." She folded the paper carefully and tucked it beneath their tiny tree. Rowan accidentally found it while plugging in the lights. He sat alone after Nora fell asleep. For the first time since burying his wife, tears refused to stop. He wasn't crying because he lacked money. He cried because his daughter believed his happiness mattered more than presents. Across town, Maren battled struggles of her own. The inheritance that had allowed her to purchase the farmhouse was nearly exhausted after unexpected repairs. She quietly took evening bookkeeping work to cover expenses. Still, she couldn't stop thinking about Rowan and Nora. Christmas Eve arrived wrapped in fresh snow. Rowan planned the simplest celebration imaginable. Homemade pancakes. Hot chocolate. Board games. Love would have to replace expensive gifts. Just before sunset, someone knocked on the door. Outside stood several neighbors. Behind them sat a trailer overflowing with lumber, groceries, winter clothing, toys, and enough building supplies to keep Rowan working until spring. Confused, he asked what had happened. An older farmer smiled. "We heard what kind of man you are." Word had quietly spread through the community. The widow whose porch Rowan repaired without charging. The elderly veteran whose leaking roof Rowan fixed before fixing paid jobs. The struggling family whose furnace he repaired late one freezing night because children were inside. Every kindness returned at once. Marin stood quietly near the back, saying almost nothing. She hadn't organized charity. She had simply told people the truth. That sometimes the strongest man in town was also the one carrying the heaviest burden. Neighbors responded with their hearts. Not their wallets. Someone offered steady construction work. Another offered contracts repairing barns. A retired carpenter donated quality tools. By Christmas morning, Rowan no longer feared losing the small house where he and Nora lived. Hope had returned wearing work boots. Months passed. Spring painted the valley green once more. Business steadily grew. Rowan eventually hired 2 assistants. He no longer rushed from job to job merely surviving. Instead, he began building something lasting. Nora flourished too. Her laughter became easier. Her eyes carried less sadness. She even spoke about her mother without tears for the first time. One warm afternoon, Rowan returned to the farmhouse carrying fresh wildflowers gathered beside the road. Not because it was a special occasion. Because ordinary days deserved beauty too. He found Marin planting tomatoes behind the greenhouse they had repaired together months earlier. She looked happier than when they'd first met. Not because life had become perfect. Because she no longer carried it alone. The wind chimes Nora had restored danced gently overhead. Their familiar music filled the air. Rowan finally understood something grief had hidden from him for years. Moving forward never meant leaving the past behind. It meant carrying love differently. His late wife would always remain part of his story. But pain no longer had to write every chapter. Somewhere between repairing roofs and surviving storms, he had quietly built a new beginning. Not by searching for love. But by choosing kindness every ordinary day. That evening, as sunlight painted the fields gold, Nora ran laughing through the garden while butterflies floated above blooming flowers. Rowan watched her. Then looked toward Marin. Neither needed dramatic words. Some relationships grow slowly enough that trust arrives before romance ever notices. And perhaps that is the strongest kind of love. One built not from perfect moments, but from countless imperfect ones where people simply choose to stay. Before this story ends, we'd love to hear from you. Please leave a comment with the words, "Kindness always finds its way home." If this story touched your heart, reminded you that hope can bloom after heartbreak, or inspired you to believe in second chances, please like this video, share it with someone who needs encouragement today, leave your thoughts in the comments, and subscribe to A Journey of Hearts. Every interaction helps these stories reach more people who may be waiting for a reminder that even after the darkest storm, the sun still rises. Because sometimes, the greatest love story doesn't begin with someone saying, "Stay the night." Sometimes it begins with a father quietly refusing the sofa, choosing instead to keep a promise made to the little girl who trusted him with her whole heart. And in keeping that promise, he unknowingly opened the door to a future brighter than either of them had ever dared to imagine.